Well, I hope everybody's frustrated as hell and anxious today, and as pissed off as I am with the way things are. If not, just close this thing out and go watch a cartoon or something. I'm real tired of talking into this machine with very few people listening, and we're getting the impression that nobody really gives a shit, but I'm going to try again. There's an article in the newspaper today about the court system. And those of you that haven't been daydreaming or too high on something to understand what's gone on in the last year or so, there's been an epidemic of a virus called COVID. And you had all kinds of denials in there and a lot of various things happening to our society because of COVID. And a lot of things were exposed. Not only were the people exposed to the disease, but a lot of ideas were exposed to ridicule. And a lot of ideas or myths were exposed. And you would think that maybe, just maybe, some politicians and administrators might have learned a few things. But I guess not. A year ago, I lost my parrot. My parrot was pretty smart. She was an African gray, and she would converse with me. And I could teach her things, and she would teach me things. And we were pretty good buddies. And you can train parrots. And the African gray, you can actually train to think. I lectured at a university, and I used to think that I could teach students. And I got pretty good ratings from my students for my teaching. So I thought, well, maybe I'll do a video presentation. Maybe I can teach a few people that way. The problem is, to teach, you have to have people out there wanting to learn. And you have to have people that are open-minded enough to learn and maybe have a passion for learning. I don't know pretty much what the conditions are out there now, but they sure as hell aren't conducive to learning. And the real problem is we've got a bunch of leaders in this country that not only are not good teachers, they might be good teachers, but they don't have enough courage to teach. What they do is they go out and look at an opinion poll or take a poll among their drinking buddies and decide, well, this is what all my drinking buddies are thinking, and this is therefore what I should teach. This is what my opinion should be. And we educate a bunch of these fools, and what do we teach them? We teach them to be more discerned. We're able to discern the prejudice and ignorance of certain people rather than discern what needs to be taught and what could be taught. So, I got out of high school 60 years ago, maybe 50 years ago. Longer than I want to remember. When I got out of high school, you needed a certain grade point average to get into the university that I attended. And they expected a certain quality of work to stay there. And at the initial educational assembly, or whatever the hell you want to call it, they told us to look to the right, look to the left, and that person ain't going to be there. unless they're disciplined, unless they want to learn. And you needed a certain grade point average to get into the school. So it wasn't that they were ignoramuses. It wasn't that they weren't capable of learning. It was something else. There had to be a passion for learning. There had to be a want, a desire to learn. And you had to have a certain curiosity. Now we have a bunch of entitled people out there. They really don't have that much curiosity. They take everything for granted. They don't want to work at anything to learn. They expect everything to be delivered. They expect so-called artificial intelligence to make decisions for them, or others to make decisions for them, and then if the decision is wrong, they have others to blame. And our policy, unlike the rest of the world, is run by advertising, by public opinion. It is not run by research. That's not so bad, except for the fact that when there are research opportunities afforded, we as a people ignore them. For instance, let's take jails and crime and things like this. It's been the whipping boy of American propaganda for 50 years that I know of. I started out in undergraduate school and then did some graduate work in an area they called criminology. It was the study of crime, the theory behind crime, why do we have crime, who are the criminals, etc. Well, you had to know a little bit of mathematics to do statistical analysis for that. You had to have a little bit of sense to figure things out. Also, the whole matrix of society came into the area of study when you studied criminology. Well, soon you had a society that really didn't give a shit about the cause of crime. They didn't care about the cause of crime. They just wanted to be safe. So let's not worry about the criminal. Let's not worry about what causes crime. What we want to do is worry about how do we make people safe. And to do so, we sell fear so we can sell gadgets to them that can make them safer, or at least give the illusion of making them safer. So they pretty much abandoned criminology as a source of knowledge or a field of study, and they changed it to criminal justice. So instead of figuring out what causes crime, what can we do to stop crime, let's figure out crime. We don't do that anymore. We say, how do we lock up more efficiently? How do we make ourselves safe? Let's not worry about the criminal. Let's not worry about what causes crime. Let's lock everybody up and make sure that we're safe, because that's what counts. We don't have to do anything to benefit society as long as we're safe. So we can build gated communities and stay safe. We can put guards at schools and make our children safe. We can do all kinds of things to make people safe. There's statistics now about various universities and where their locations are. And the statistics talk about crime rates in certain areas. And the crime rates in certain areas are more for various reasons, a lot of which are associated with poverty. So you can have areas where there are good universities, like University of Chicago, that's going to be in a high crime rate area because of the surrounding areas. So we publish the University of Chicago has a higher crime rate than, say, Western State College in Gunnison, Colorado, which is in a small town. Now, is that really relevant, or is that important? Where would you rather go to school? Would you rather go to school where you get connections? Would you rather go to school where you learn something? Or would you rather send your kids to school where it's safe? We got to make that decision. And most people don't, or they choose safety. And the fact of the matter is, a lot of locations can be safe if we spend more money. But we don't care to spend money because, costs. Taxes go up. So we've evolved over the years to the point where our judicial system are now marketers for various entrepreneurial endeavors. They're marketers for gadgets, they're marketers for programs, they're shills for various scams to beat money out of people. They're circus barkers. So, for instance, the public is afraid of recidivism. That is, repeat offenders. So you get a snake oil salesman says, I know what to do about repeat offenders. I'm starting up this clinic, and you people send me your offenders, and we'll call it probation or something, corrections, halfway house. I don't care, you give it a good marketing name, and you send us your people and give us a bunch of money, and we'll keep track of them. So when I was in undergraduate and graduate school, they had a Master's of Corrections, where it was sort of like being a social worker. You worked on problems that faced people being released from prison, how to get jobs, how to keep a job, how to adjust to society. Well, now you don't. You sink or swim. But you get some private corporation that has somebody at minimum wage, and he's going to do a little check mark. Check here, check there, and he's going to check into this person. And if he checks in without any tardiness or whatever, then he's going to successfully complete his program. He can also be on a work release, so he can get a job. And if he does everything and checks in time and completes the program successfully, then he's a success, and he goes off probation. The court is happy, the prosecutor is happy, the court personnel are happy, and of course industry's happy. So there's another article in the paper about, I think it was Connecticut, where they're even charging room and board for prisoners. So a guy goes to jail, he's broke, he has to commit a crime to feed his family, he gets caught, he has no prospects, and he's in jail, and he gets charged so much a day. He spends 2 or 3 years in jail. His bill has gone up there to the astronomical heights, for unemployed people at least, and he's released. And he's released to a world to which he owes a lot of money, and without the ability to pay. Well, that's a formula for failure if I've ever seen one. Now we got these various programs. So various entrepreneurs who all they care about is money make presentations to the court system, which is run now by people who are told that the taxpayers don't like to pay money for things, that their job is to be efficient and shut up about it if you can't be efficient. And you got all of these programs now. So for instance, I had one client once who was a Mr. Peepers type. He needed assertiveness training, really, because everybody walked on him. He was a doormat. And there was nothing open at that time. There were no kind of programs for him. So the Jefferson County court system decided that they'd send him to domestic violence training and learn more how to stifle his emotions even more. And he became more of a doormat. But that placated the public. He was sent to a program, and he had to pay for the program. So he put all this money for a program that made him worse. And all of the bureaucrats got to check their boxes, and there wasn't any study on the efficacy of the program, and everybody patted themselves on the back because he successfully completed a program. Well, it would have taken a lot for the guy to have screwed up. But let's take another instance, or several other instances. They go on a program, and the courts don't want to take any chances. They don't want to make a decision on somebody. They don't want any blowback. So what do? There's a stipulation. They can make everybody take a urine test. So you got some minimum wage violator, and every week he has to pee in a bottle and pay somebody $25. Now, who's in charge of that? You got a judge making at least $150,000 a year. You got a prosecutor making over $100,000 a year. You got court clerks making $70,000, $80,000 a year, and you got somebody on minimum wage who goes in front of the courts. That's a screw up. And so that they don't have to take a chance, they make him pay an outside corporation money to monitor him, not to help him get jobs or anything else, to make sure he complies with the court order, which has taken no research whatsoever. It's come out of a form book. And just to make sure that you cover bases, you make him pee in a bottle every week and pay for the urinalysis and say, well, he's not taking drugs. He's not doing this or he's not doing that. And if he doesn't do it, then you violate him. And it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. And the privatized treatment plans have built-in obsolescence for many of their people. And to me, it's just absolutely remarkable that nobody's really talking about this. Everybody's accepting it. So, for instance, I read in the newspaper, after the COVID pandemic died down, and that's what I started talking about here. You've got COVID, you've got an opportunity for really good research. You have a bunch of people that were sick. You had a court system that was essentially shut down. They had very few hearings. They didn't have live proceedings. They had video proceedings. And they didn't populate the jail because you had to squeeze too many bodies into a small confined area, and it spread the disease. So people were not arrested. They were given summons. We don't know how many because nobody's measuring it, or if they are measuring it, nobody's talking about it. But I, for instance, would like to know how many people during the pandemic were issued summons and not arrested and taken to jail. And then I'd like to see, was there any statistically significant difference between those persons that were issued a summons and told to appear in court and appeared in court for the proceedings, and those that were jailed for breaking the law. Now, when I went to law school, I was taught jail was an absolute right. I was taught a common law system. Nixon, who had a few faults, and Spiro Agnew, who had a lot of faults, and John Mitchell, who had a few faults, was the Attorney General. And according to his wife, Martha, he had a few faults. But one of the addresses he gave to the Bar Association of the United States was that in our democratic form of government, a Republican form of government, we didn't have preventive detention. We didn't lock people up because they might reoffend. We don't lock people up that we captured because of offenses, because they might hurt somebody. We don't lock people up because they're presumed to be innocent. We admit them to bail because you have a constitutional right to bail. There's no constitutional right for people to be protected. There is a constitutional right for people to expect their government to protect them, but to protect them within constitutional boundaries. There's no constitutional right for the government, for bureaucratic people, to amend the Constitution to their will to placate public opinion, or to placate the squeaky wheels, or to grease the squeaky wheels, or to violate everybody's rights because a certain group don't give a damn, and they don't care about our government, they don't care about our Constitution. They don't give a damn about anything except for whether or not they are safe. So, we have a sword of Damocles hanging over our population, and nobody's going to take the sword down. Everybody's going to run around and figure out how to avoid the sword rather than easily taking it down. And that's the society that we're living in. So nobody's talking about what was the crime rate during the pandemic, what was the rate of recidivism, what was the rate of harm done by people that weren't incarcerated upon arrest. Was there a significant difference between those issued summonses and those not issued summonses but incarcerated prior to trial? We don't have any of that data. But we have an official saying, well, we hired the Vera Institute, which is a very great institute, by the way, to do a study on our procedures to see if our arrest procedures discriminate. Well, my feeling is, who gives a shit if it discriminates if they're not necessary in the first place? And anything by its nature is going to be discriminatorial because of the various strata of our society. So I think, first off, any responsible person with any intestinal fortitude or any semblance of conscience or any sense of service, public service, service to the community, service to his fellow citizenry, would say, let's study this. Do we need to lock up these people? What is the percentage of locking these people up compared to the percentage of not locking them up and giving them summonses? Who is harmed by not locking these people up? Is it the public or the private people that are scamming the public with their programs? Look at the student loan programs, for instance. They were nothing but scams. They were allowing private industry to come in here and essentially victimize young people, victimize students with false premises, and making institutions grease up their numbers and grease up their funding at the expense of young people who, we've wrecked a whole generation because we put all these kids in debt. Now we're wrecking other generations because we're starting out people in debt. We're starting them out with records. We're starting them out with an assumption by our society that they're bad in the first place and they need to be locked up. And anybody that comes to the attention of law enforcement should probably be locked up so that we can be safe, because we don't want to take a goddamn chance on these people. Well, I say we ought to take a chance. I say society should be worth it. I say we should take chances with our fellow human beings. We should not treat them like untouchables. We should not treat poor people like untouchables. Leave that to other countries. Let's find out facts. Let's get public servants in there that say we need more facts. Do we really need to have preventive detention, or am I encouraging preventive detention so I can tell you I'm protecting you so that you vote for me in the next election? And because I'm a coward and I don't want to tell you the truth because the truth may hurt me. So I'm not going to tell you that all of this stuff is bullshit, that the statistics show this or the statistics show that. I'm going to say, keep me in office and I'll keep you safe. Well, these people ought to be hung by their thumbs or other vital parts because they're intellectually dishonest and they're devout cowards, and we should not reward cowardice by giving them a public paycheck. Who we should reward are the courageous people that tell the truth. We need more truth sayers out there. We don't need con artists. And we particularly don't need con artists making over $100,000 a year that have a good grin and a glad hand and kiss a few babies and tell you, I'm going to make you safe. I'm the Wizard of Oz. So let's, as a public, get real. Let's demand that our politicians justify their policy. Let's demand other people justify their policy. Let's demand that they do research, they find facts, and tell us what the facts are. Let's tell them to throw away the snake oil and give us real medicine. Thank you for listening and watching. Hope you guys have a good week. Roar.